I'm sure you've heard the news. The house stood alone, at the edge of town, where the pavement crumbled and the streetlights dimmed. Harbinger Lane, a name whispered by children, never spoken by adults.
It was our home.
The old Victorian house creaked and groaned, each sound a lament. We were the only residents, my mother and I, she seeking solace, me seeking escape. We found neither, only silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. The air inside was always cold, damp, like the breath of the graveyard just beyond the hill. Shadows clung to the corners, thick and menacing.
I could never shake the feeling of being watched, of being hunted.
Are you terrified to hear what happened next? It started subtly, a flicker of movement from the corner of my eye, a whisper of my name when no one was around. I dismissed it as childish fear, but the shadows grew bolder, more persistent. The grandfather clock in the hall stopped at 3:03 every night the same time, the same eerie silence followed by the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, ascending the stairs to my room.
One night I saw it, a fleeting glimpse, a shadow, darker than the darkness, standing in my doorway. I blinked, and it was gone. But the feeling remained, a cold dread that seeped into my bones.
I think I messed up.
"Mom," I pleaded, "there's something in the house."
There's nothing here, honey.
Her eyes held a weary sadness.
It's just an old house.
She patted my hand, a hollow gesture. She didn't believe me. She refused to see. The flickering lights, the cold spots, the strange symbols etched into the floorboards underneath the rug in the attic. They were everywhere. A silent language of fear.
But I knew better. This was not the work of time or decay. This was something else, something evil, something that wanted me.
You need to hear this if you're a fan of horror stories. Days grew colder, even inside, the air thick and heavy, hard to breathe. My breath came out in ragged gasps like I was running, but I wasn't. I was frozen, in place by fear. One afternoon the sun vanished, eclipsed by a sudden darkness. The temperature plummeted. My breath formed clouds in the air. The house groaned, a low, mournful sound like a death rattle.
My hand trembled as I reached for the thermostat. The dial spun, uselessly. The furnace remained silent. The house grew colder, the air thick with dread. I was trapped in an icy tomb with something else. Are you terrified to hear laughter in the dead of night? Sleep became impossible. Every creak of the floorboard, every rustle of leaves, sent shivers down my spine. I lay awake, staring into the darkness, listening, always listening. One night I heard it, laughter, soft at first, then growing louder, echoing through the empty halls. But it wasn't the laughter of a child. It was cold, cruel, and utterly inhuman. I pulled the covers over my head, trying to block out the sound. But it was no use. The laughter seemed to come from inside my head, whispering my name, mocking my fear. I was not alone. Am I the only one that didn't know? My reflection, no longer my own, in the mirror, a flicker of something else behind my eyes, gone in an instant. But I knew, I had seen it. The darkness was inside me now. The shadows grew bolder, taking on shapes just beyond the edge of my vision. Twisted figures, with eyes that glowed, an unnatural yellow, in the dark, watching me, always watching. I tried to tell my mother, but the words caught in my throat. How do you explain the unexplainable? How do you describe the look in the eyes of something that isn't human? This is gonna blow your mind. The darkness deepened, a living, breathing presence. It pressed in on me, smothering, suffocating. I was a fly, caught in a spider's web, powerless and utterly terrified. The scratching started, at first faint, barely audible, like the claws of a small animal, against the wall, outside my bedroom door. But it grew louder, more insistent, more desperate. Terror seized me. I huddled beneath the covers, my heart pounding, in my ears. The scratching stopped. A moment of silence, then a thud, like something heavy had fallen. against the door.
Cold whispers. This is going to blow your mind. Voices echoing in the silence, whispering, just beyond the veil of sleep. They lingered just out of reach. They called to me, lured me with promises of peace, of a serene escape, of oblivion. Their voices, cold, empty, like the void itself, devoid of humanity. I woke with a start, heart pounding, my body drenched in sweat, every pore screaming in terror. The room was cold, colder than usual, an unnatural chill, the air thick with the stench of decay, and something more, and something else. Something ancient and evil, a presence that shouldn't be. The boy is lying in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, fear gripping his heart. The room is dark, and the only light comes from a window where the moon is partially obscured by clouds, whispers in the dark, filling the silence. The whispering continued, faint but unmistakable, growing louder. They were closer now, just outside my door, waiting. Their voices slithered under the crack, seeping into my sanctuary, into my room, into my mind, consuming my thoughts. This is why you need to listen closely. They know my name, spoken in the darkness, a hiss, a sigh, a threat. It echoed through the void, reverberating in my mind, sending chills down my spine. The darkness seemed to come alive with the sound of my name, wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud.
They knew me. These things, these shadows, these whispers. They knew my fears, my secrets, my soul. Panic surged through me. Every shadow seemed to hold a piece of my past, every whisper a fragment of my deepest fears. I felt exposed, vulnerable, as if they could see right through me. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I was paralyzed, frozen in place by the sheer terror of it all. They were here, and they were coming for me. My throat tightened, my heart pounded, and my body refused to obey my desperate commands to flee.
A close-up shot of the boy's face, illuminated by a faint light. His eyes are wide with terror, and his mouth is open in a silent scream. Paralyzed by fear. The light flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced around him, amplifying his horror.
The door creaked open, slowly, deliberately, as if inviting me to witness my own demise. Each creak was a heartbeat. Each inch it opened a step closer to my end. The darkness beyond the door seemed to beckon me, promising nothing but despair. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't escape. I was trapped with the darkness. It enveloped me, pressing in from all sides, suffocating me with its weight. My mind raced, searching for a way out, but there was none. The darkness had me, and it wasn't letting go.
Are you terrified of being left alone in the dark? Mommy, don't leave me.
Mom! I finally managed to choke out, my voice a hoarse whisper. She had to believe me now. She had to see. The terror in my eyes, the truth, that I wasn't imagining things.
Footsteps, heavy, purposeful, coming down the hall.
What is it, honey? She sounded tired, annoyed, unaware of the danger that lurked just outside my door.
They're here, I whimpered. They're here for me.
The footsteps stopped outside my door, a moment of silence, then the doorknob, slowly, started to turn. This is going to blow your mind. The knob turned, a slow, agonizing grind, each movement amplified in the silence.
Oppressive. It carried a chill that sank deep into my bones, paralyzing me with fear. My breath caught in my throat, my eyes fixed on the widening gap between door and frame. Darkness oozed in, not the absence of light, but something solid.
I wanted to scream, but terror had stolen my voice, my body, my will. I could only watch, helpless as the darkness encroached on my sanctuary, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. Are you terrified to feel their touch? A hand emerged, if you could call it that. Pale, gaunt, fingers tipped with claws, black and sharp like shards of obsidian. They scraped against the floorboards, sending shivers down my spine.
The air grew heavy, rank with the stench of decay and something else, something ancient, something evil. It pressed down on me, smothering, suffocating.
I closed my eyes, wishing it all away. But the feeling remained, a cold dread that seeped into my very core. They were here, in my room, closer now than ever before. Are you terrified to face the unknown in the dark?
Honey, are you all right?
Her voice a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness, but it was too late. They were already here. I could feel their presence, cold, menacing.
"Mum, behind you!" I wanted to shout to warn her, but the words wouldn't come. My voice, a strangled gasp, lost in the terror that consumed me.
It's just a nightmare, sweetie.
She stepped into the room, her hand reaching for the light switch, but I knew it wouldn't make a difference. The darkness was already inside. I don't think people understand the true terror of finding scratch marks in your own home. The light flickered on.
Revealing nothing. My room, just as I'd left it. The door wide open, but no sign of the creatures, of the darkness.
You see, it was just a bad dream.
Relief washed over me. Maybe she was right. Maybe it had all been just a nightmare.
Then I saw it. 3 long, deep scratches on the bedroom door, marks that hadn't been there before. My blood ran cold. They were gone, but they had left their mark, and they would be back.
You need to hear this if you're a parent.
I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My mother's words, meant to comfort, echoed in my ears, hollow and distant. The scratches, proof. I wasn't imagining it. They were real.
It's okay, she said, her voice soft, laced with concern.
She didn't understand, couldn't see the truth etched into the wood. A message, a warning. They had been here. I tried to point, to scream, to make her understand, but my arm felt heavy, like lead. My voice stuck in my throat, a strangled gasp, lost in the silence of the room.
This is going to blow your mind. Then I saw it, a flicker of movement. In the shadows under my bed, 2 points of light glowing with an eerie yellow luminescence. The eyes, they were back.
Honey, what is it? My mother's voice, closer now. She was coming towards me, towards the bed, towards the darkness that lurked beneath.
"Don't," I finally managed to croak, but it was too late. She had already reached the edge of the bed, her hand hovering over the spot where the eyes glowed.
This is going to blow your mind.
The bedspread flew up, tossed aside, as if it had a life of its own, as if by an unseen hand. Objects moved, defying logic, as if by an unseen hand. My mother gasped, a sound of surprise, her eyes wide with terror, of fear, pure, unadulterated fear, of fear. Finally, she understood. Finally, she understood the horror. She saw it. The darkness, she saw it. The darkness. That had haunted me for so long. A cold wind swept through the room. It was chilling, almost unnatural. A cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the lamp, plunging us into darkness. The room felt like a void. I heard my mother scream, a scream that echoed through the house. I heard my mother scream, a high-pitched wail, that was cut short, abruptly.
Then, silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. It was as if the world had stopped. I was alone. Completely and utterly alone. I was alone. The scratches, they were the only sign. The scratches on the door. The only evidence that my mother had ever been there. At all. They told a story of their own. Are you terrified to face the unknown? The first tendrils of dawn slipped through the cracks in the blinds, painting the room in hues of grey.
I lay there, cold, empty, alone. The events of the night, a blur, a nightmare from which I couldn't wake. My mother gone, vanished into thin air.
They had taken her, the shadows, the whispers, the things that lurked in the darkness. They had come for me, but taken her instead. The scratches on the door, a chilling reminder of their presence, of their power. They were a promise, unspoken, but understood. We belong to the darkness now.